And so at this point, we've been talking for a long time, right? So at this point, there's a couple things you can do. And I highly recommend this, by the way. You can't talk to them for 55 minutes straight. You've got to have other little things, something to break up the lecture, something to break up the PowerPoint. These are some really cool little experiments that don't take a lot of material, that don't take a lot of time, but what they do is they give you a little bit of a breakup, right? So this a simple little candle, you can get it at any store typically, grocery store, Dollar General, Piggly Wiggly, wherever you're at. So this is a colander that you'd find at the grocery store, little steel colander. And I tell them about the old times when the miners that were digging in the coal mines, when they'd go down with their candles because they couldn't see. Well, the problem with digging for coal is sometimes you run into natural gas, CH4. And when that happens, there's explosions and fires. But somebody figured out that if I put a metal screen over that candle and we get gas that comes in there, the candle itself burns, the gas inside the metal burns, but when I pull the gas away, or the gas on the outside, it won't burn. What happens is this little experiment shows that heat is important because the steel in this mesh absorbs the heat. And so when the gas goes inside, it burns, but when I pull it away, the gas is still coming out, but there's no more heat. So I'm showing them that. The other thing I can do is I can prove to them about this liquid that I was about the gases that I was telling about. So this candle is a solid, just like wood, and the heat from the candle turns the candle to a liquid. And as the liquid turns, it boils out, and we can dump out the liquid. So we know it's a liquid. So maybe it's the liquid that burns. Well, then I blow out the candle, and I show them the smoke. I said the smoke is actually part of that candle. What happens is in order for fire to work, you have to turn it to a gas. It doesn't work as a liquid. It doesn't work as a solid. And one of the reasons why gasoline is such an amazing fuel is because it off-gases or produces vapors down to minus 42 degrees. Has anyone ever been to a gas station and smelled the gasoline, even though there's not gasoline poured all over the place? It's because it's small parts of gasoline floating through the air. Those vapors are what burn. We also talk about oxygen, and you can use a little simple experiment, a quart jar and a pint jar, and you can put two candles down there, and you can even ask the question or pose the question to them. Oxygen's important, we know that. The book says so. Which one of these jars would hold more oxygen? What percentage of oxygen is in the Earth's atmosphere? 20.9%. So you have a bunch of stuff you can talk about there. You set the candle, set the jars there, so two jars. You have two stopwatches, you got two students up there, and they're gonna keep time. This should be almost double the amount of time as this. So it's a way of proving that theory that oxygen is a limited quantity and fire needs it. And if the oxygen goes away or reduces to a level below 14%, fire stops working. So we can have a lot of fun with that sort of thing. If you're interested in doing something different than a forensic fire investigation, well, it'll all be forensic fire investigation. I'm using an actual crime in mine, but you can do something like this. You can bring a little power strip like this, and this one actually came out of a house where they had a problem, but you could make one of these with a torch. You don't even have to plug it in. You put a plug there, you light it on fire, you burn it for a little bit. You probably should wear some bleeding protection because the stuff that comes out of here is awful. But you can make one of these and say the importance, like, so this could be the cause of your fire at the end of the story. And it goes to, we don't overload outlets, we don't overload power strips, something like that. If you want it to be a cooking fire, burn up a pot, get a grill and heat that thing up, light it on fire. Again, do it safely with the proper gear and safety and all that other great stuff. But get yourself a pot that's been destroyed by fire. And at the end of your day, you're going to show them a pot that caused a fire because some kid didn't think through the process enough, didn't do enough scientific analysis, didn't collect enough data, and they burned up their house. It's all about giving them, again, it could be a multiple different things it just depends on where you want to go with this. Another thing that's really interesting to show them is, this is actually a book of wooden matches, and I set it on a burner. You can't do this inside because it produces some icky smelling stuff, and teachers do not appreciate that at all. But what you can do is you can show them two of these, one with this little tar stuff, which actually looks like liquid. That's your process of pyrolysis. That's your fuel. versus unburned matches. So you can show them that in order for this match to burn, it has to transform. It has to have a chemical reaction, changing from these beautiful cellulose and moisture-laden sticks to charcoal, essentially. So it's a process. All right. Okay. We still holding in there, everybody? Sounds like everybody's doing okay. We're going to keep pushing through. So let's go back to our little fire here. So again, at this point in the conversation, here's what we have. We have a door being kicked in. We have a TV stand knocked over. We have a TV missing. We know from our collection of data that the TV stand was knocked over before the fire got big, at least before it got big, but probably before the fire even started. That's what we know so far. And then I show them this little picture right here. So when I was doing investigations, I actually had an accelerant detection dog, Mako, and he came with me for the first several years to the classrooms. It's a lot better than having a book of matches when you do a demonstration, but not everybody has a dog. So there are other things you can do. You don't have to have a dog. In this case, what I did though is I showed them that we collected samples. It wasn't just from what I saw. We actually collected other things for other people to analyze. At this particular case, I explained to them that this little paint can is filled with pieces of wood and drywall and fire debris. I will collect this stuff. I will seal it up. I will put evidence tape on it, and I will send it to a crime lab. There are two chemists at our crime lab, Sherry and Devin. They're smarter than me. Go like this. They're chemists. So what they do is they take this information and they analyze the data for me. As an investigator, as a scientist, it's not necessary for me to be the one to analyze all the data. If there's someone better suited for that, I'm going to have them do it. And then I show them this over here. This is the door that was kicked in. And I show them these little wavy lines. And I ask, what does that look like? Guaranteed, one kid's going to go, it looks like a shoe. I say, perfect. It looks exactly like a shoe. I said, let's collect some more data from the door, shall we? So as I'm looking at the door, I see this one print like this, and I'm like, that's a shoe print. It looks like a right foot, and it looks like about a size 10 or 11 maybe. I don't know, just guessing. And then I say, by the way, did I tell you that I found a second shoe print? And they go, what? And they, no, you didn't tell us that. I'm like, well, I did. I found a second shoe print. Now, here's the funny thing. It's a little different size, a little smaller. And it's a different shoe. And it's a right foot. They're both right feet. They're both right foot shoes. What does that mean? And inevitably, they'll say, there were two people. I'm like, excellent, two people. I said, or there was one of the strangest people on the planet that had two right feet and they were different sizes. We can't exclude that. And they'll laugh, of course. And then, so I said, okay, now here's the story. We've got two footprints, one small one, one big one. I said, now what does that tell us? And they're like, well, it was kicked twice. I said, exactly. I said, I'm not a betting man, but I would say that if, working out a hypothesis, I bet the first person to kick the door was the little person, and the second person to kick the door was the big person. And they laugh at that. I'm like, it's possible. So at this point, we'll do something a little fun. Now, this is a newer thing that I just started doing because Mako can't come anymore to the schools. I don't know if you can, I hope you can see these because they're awesome. So you go to the Goodwill and you buy yourselves a pile of little kid shoes. And then you bring some footprints, some shoe prints. So what I do is I will give two kids a big box like this and another two kids another big box like this. And I will say, you've got 60 seconds to find those shoes of the people that kicked that door in. I'm here to tell you, sometimes the shoes go flying and it's a lot of fun. So inevitably what I want them to do is I want them to find the correct shoe that goes with that pattern, right? And that's analyzing the data. Here's the other thing about this. It gives me an opportunity to explain to them things like fingerprints, DNA. I said, these are all things that are unique to individuals, right? I said, now, if Nike made 1 million pair of this one shoe in size 9, they're not unique, correct? Correct. Well, now, if you wear that shoe for 6 months and you step on a tack or you rub it on a piece of concrete or something or a rock, that can make that shoe unique. So just because there's 1,000 of these Skechers, if they've been worn for a while, I can still find a unique match. And so we explain that concept to them, that it's the uniqueness of comparison, right? Fun stuff. Fun stuff. All right. So it does. This is. I think I'm enjoying myself tremendously, but it actually, there's something missing when I don't have somebody yelling at me when it happens. So it's a little different. But I'm having a great time. I hope you're all getting something out of it. So again, we talk about analyzing, and I stress upon them that it's not important for me to do that a lot of times. I want to find somebody that's smarter than me to do it. I'll also carry a camera with a flash on it, right? And I'll talk about pictures, and I'll talk about how I analyze things. So fingerprints, tire prints, DNA, burn samples, that stuff I have other people do because there are other people that are smarter than me. But when it comes to fire patterns, that's my jam. That's where I live. That's what I do really well. And I'll take a lot of photographs. And again, you do it so many times, you want to make it fun for yourself too, so that your passion stays in the game, right? So I'll have the camera and I'll kind of point it at the ground with the flash, kind of pointing at the kids, and I'll just shoot a couple pictures real quick. And I go, when I go to a fire scene, why do I take pictures? And they'll tell me, and as I'm flashing the flash a couple of times, and I said, why am I taking pictures now? And a couple of them will come up with some crazy answers. I said, no, it's just to blind sixth graders. That's why I'm doing it. And again, I never get a picture of a kid's face, but it's just something to have a little fun and make them laugh. Because if they're enjoying the class, they're paying attention. I'm no Adam Sandler or Chris Rock, but I do my best. So we talk about fire patterns, talk about why we take pictures, and I mentioned to them it preserves the scene as I saw it, because at some point in time as a scientist, I have to take the information that I collected and I have to give it to somebody else. I have to tell the story of what happened. I talk about report writing. Oh, I forgot something on the interviewing, and I want to stress this too. This is an opportunity for me to tell them how important school is. And so during the interviewing process I'll ask, when I talk to people, I'll ask them questions. And when I talk to the person that called 911, and I said, what kind of things can that person tell me? And somebody will say, what started the fire? I said, what? What started the fire? And I'll say what, like 2 or 3 times. What? That's exactly right. They can ask what started the fire. What else can they do? And then some kid will say, where? Where was the fire? I'm like, exactly, where? And I'll say where again. And then eventually they'll just start saying who, what, when, where, why, how. And I'll stop and I said, exactly. If you've ever done an English paper and wrote a story, they've told you to use these who, what, when, where, why, and how. I said, it's no different. And then I scratched my head and I said, wait, did I just take science class and turn it into English class? It's important that you can write a report because we got to share this information. So again, we talk about analyzing the data. Now it's developing a hypothesis. So in this particular case, there's no words, there's no pictures. We're talking about what information they've collected. 2 sets of footprints on the door. And when I talk about interviewing, we bring this up. I said, now typically when someone goes and kicks a door in to help somebody, I, as an investigator, get to talk to them because they stick around. Very rarely do I never find somebody that tried to help. But if somebody didn't try to help, somebody did it for a bad reason, I can't find them. So then I mentioned the fact that I had a neighbor who saw 4 males at the house or on that street just before the fire. Then I mentioned the fact that there was also a computer missing. There was also some other stuff missing. And we add more of that data in. And then we start developing a hypothesis. We start locking down. And then I bring up that the sample that we collected actually had gasoline on it. And I asked the question, how many of you have gasoline in your living room? It's amazing that some of the kids don't know the difference between natural gas and gasoline. Big difference. But when somebody says, I have gas in my living room, I said, are you sure? And they go, yeah, it's the fireplace. I said, no, that's natural gas. It's a different thing. Burns kind of the same, but different. I said, no, gasoline is what you put in your car, and it's very rarely in someone's living room. So having several samples come back positive is a big deal. So all the information we collect, now we start developing that hypothesis, and then it comes to testing the hypothesis. And I go back to the Oreo cookie thing where I say, look, you knew the Oreo cookies and the milk were going to solve that problem of hunger for you. The reason why you knew that is because you've had it before. You've done the work before. Now, as a fire investigator, we test hypotheses through our past experiences. We test our hypothesis through certain types of publications and materials that we rely on, previous testing. Sometimes we get to go to the ATF lab and build the building and actually light it on fire like we think happened. So we test the theory. Could this have happened? Do we get to do that all the time? No, because it costs a ton of money. We have to rely on our training, our experience to test this hypothesis. And we also ask other people's advice, because why wouldn't you bring in somebody if they're smarter than you? You ask other people, what do you think? So we test that hypothesis. That's how that process works. When it comes to a criminal case, we select our final hypothesis, the final decision that we have, and we also have another test. In this case, we arrested 4 individuals. We got a witness that identified one of the 4 adults that were out there. We were able to get a search warrant. We found some shoes. We found the shoes that we were looking for, and we made an arrest. And then we took everything that we had, everything that we presented it to a jury. So there's 12 people that had to choose. Did we collect the right information? Did we come up with the right conclusion? So we actually tested our hypothesis twice. At the end of the day, what happened was the jury found that the fire was started intentionally. Incendiary is a fancy word for that. So incendiary means intentionally set fire. Good to go? All right, move on. Now, if this would have been what we call a good fire, we would have said it was an accident. Accidental cause. You all know what accidental means, right? Okay, we're gonna move on. Natural. Now, a third possibility, back in the old days before NFPA 921 changed, and I know it changed, but this curriculum was written before, so I'm sorry. Naturally caused fire. So what's naturally caused fire? So then we go through a whole bunch of stuff. We go through lightning, we go through volcanoes, that sort of thing, which is fine. We got to talk about those things. And then the last one is undetermined. Now, to the class, I will say undetermined. I said, here's the thing about undetermined. If you're a scientist, if you're truly working scientifically, you have to admit when you don't know. I've investigated about 700 fires, been a part of 700 investigations. How many times do you think I said, I don't know? And a kid will say 10. And I look at him and said, you think I'm a genius? I love you. Another kid will say 600. And I'm like, you think I'm an idiot? I still like you. And the numbers will come back and forth. And then I'll say, okay, hold on. I'm going to tell you the number. You ready? I don't know. And they'll be upset that I won't tell them. I said, I really don't know. I don't keep track. I said, as a scientist, I don't want to know. As a scientist, I need to keep a clear mind. If I have a goal to solve 75% of the fires, guess what? I'll solve 75% of the fires, because we have something called expectation bias. We have a bias that we can, and we don't want any bias. We want to collect actual data, use facts, and if the answer is I don't know, then that's the answer. Do you think I like saying I don't know? And they'll say no. And I said, here's the deal. I want you to say this. I don't want you to like it either, but I want you to be honest enough with yourself that that's what happens. Sometimes you can't get enough data. You can't analyze it. You come up with multiple theories, but you don't know what really happened because you just don't know. Be honest with yourself. That's science. And then I'll roll back to the word accident. I said, okay, by the way, you guys have all said you knew what an accident was, correct? And they'll all go, yeah. Okay. Well, here's a little story for you. Another true story. 10-year-old boy, he gets home from school, he sits down on the couch, he starts playing Xbox. Gets a little bored, gets up, goes to the restroom. He finds a book of matches, and while he's standing above the toilet, he lights one and throws in the toilet, lights another one, throws in the toilet, lights the third one, looks at it, looks at the book of matches, and he lights them all. He goes like this, and he throws it in the garbage can. Goes back to the couch, sits down, starts playing Xbox again. 15 minutes later, the sister screams, the house is on fire. Is that an accident? This is where the interesting thing happens here. You will get kids that will say yes, no. You will see the one say yes and then no right away, and then they will do the eyeball thing where they'll go up and to the left and to the right like they're trying to figure stuff out. Like, wait a minute. I mean, he lit the matches on purpose. I mean, he didn't mean to burn down the house. And then someone will say that. Well, he didn't mean to. I said, perfect. That's the definition of an accident then. He didn't mean to. I said, let me explain something to you about accidents. It's a word you should never, ever use. It's giving yourself an excuse for poor decision making. Now, here's another example. Well, I forgot. I'd also give an example of my daughter at school. So she goes to school one day. She has a great time. She, got 100% on her spelling test. She got to play kickball, and she got a home run, and she got to sit by her favorite person at lunch. She had a great day, and like her daddy, she talks with her hands. She waves those things around. And when she gets home, she's sitting down at the table and she gets out her glass of chocolate milk and she sets it right down on the edge. Well, she talks with her hands, right? So then she knocks the glass over. Is that an accident? They'll say absolutely. And then I'll explain to them that there's no such thing as an accident. It is, like Sir Isaac Newton said, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. We make a choice. My daughter made a choice to set that glass too close to the table. And then I mentioned to them that I haven't spilt the glass of milk in 40 years. Well, 38 years. Because I realized that if I set it too close to myself, I knock it over. I made a conscious decision. I just moved the glass a little bit further and the accident, quote unquote, I say it's a consequence, goes away. I said it's no different. If you light something on fire and you burn your house down, well, you made a choice. Your stuff's gone. You have a trust problem with your family. Those are the best case scenarios. The worst case scenario is somebody dies. Life's about making choices. And then I make them, sometimes this works, I would say about 50% of the time. I'll say whose choice, and they'll say my choice. And I can get them to chant that a little bit, and it's kind of cool. But the goal is to show them there's no such thing as an accident. I say if you work hard, study, and get an A on a test, it's not because you're lucky. If you don't work hard, don't study, don't pay attention, and you fail, it's not because you're stupid. I said if you realize that your actions lead to a certain outcome, well, if it's a bad outcome, you can stop it from happening. If it's a good outcome, guess what? You can do it again. It's your choice. You're getting older. School's almost out. You're going to be left alone more. You're going to be making more of your choices. And those choices are going to have consequences for the rest of your life. If you take, and one of the things that I do when I talk about, and I didn't bring this up because I didn't have the prop with me, I forgot to, was Axe body spray. So I will ask the kids to list, when I talk about liquids that burn with the gasoline samples, it's not just gasoline, it's others. And eventually one of the kids will say hairspray or Axe body spray. And I'll bring myself, to a sharp point of attention. I'll say, how do you know? And the kids will all know this. And if you take a can of body spray and you push the button and you do this, it makes a fireball. Then I bring up the fact that there's some pretty bad side effects about taking a deep breath of a fireball. And I mentioned that, does anyone have asthma? And they say yes. I said, do you use an inhaler? Yes. I said, does it work? And they, yeah. Okay, great. I said, but if you take a deep breath of a hot fire gas, what happens is your airway goes from this size, it swells up, and unless someone puts one of these down your throat so you can breathe, you suffocate and die. So when you play with this stuff, and I bring up the fact that doing this in the state of Washington is actually a crime. It's reckless burning second degree. So it's one of those things that I throw in there. Always giving them the consequences, right? I'm not trying to scare them. I'm just telling them the facts. Fire's dangerous. Fire's a tool we use, not a toy. At one point, I was working in some smoke detector stuff, and this is, again, another way you can go. I won't have a smoke detector with me, but I'll just talk about this one fire scene that I went to, and it was funny. There was a smoke detector in the hallway and smoke detector in all the bedrooms, smoke detectors on each floor, but the covers were open on some of them, and the batteries were laying on the ground. Like all the batteries had been taken out. And I asked them, why would somebody take out the batteries? So it's working the batteries and the smoke detectors into the investigation. As an investigator, I want to know if that stuff worked. And then someone will say, well, they didn't want anybody else to know about the fire. I said, exactly, right? When somebody disables alarm, that's a big deal. Now, and then I'll make them, make a promise to go home and test their smoke detector. And I'll actually ask the question, does anybody know how to test a smoke detector? Inevitably, one kid will say, light a fire. No. So I say, here's the deal. On every smoke detector, you're going to find a button. It's either round or square. And next to it are going to be 4 letters, T-E-S-T. If you push and hold the T-E-S-T button down, it goes beep, beep, beep. Again, look for that T-E-S-T button. And then one student will go, do you mean test? Like, oh, yeah, the test button. That's what it is. It's not the T test. Yeah, the test button. And they'll laugh a little bit at the joke. And then I'll tell them, here's the deal. Before you push that button, you tell the old people in the house. If anybody falls down and breaks a hip because you scared them, I'm going to blame it completely on you. I'm going to tell everyone that I told you to tell the old people. Tell the old people first, but push that TEST button and get a test going. So you can work that angle into it. You can work cooking. Again, it's all based off of forensics because that's what we watch on television. Those are the movies we go to. Magnum PI, NCIS, 48 Hours. There's a million cop shows on television, million, because everybody likes a good mystery. So you got to keep it fun. That's absolutely one of the most critical things, because if they're not having fun, they're not paying attention. And at the end of the day, the whole process leads to giving them the ability or a tool to make a better decision. I tell them if they slow down and they collect more data, they analyze that data, and they think of that next step, what's coming afterwards, which in most cases we can predict. Has anyone ever been opening a package with a knife or a razor blade and told themselves, I shouldn't do this, it's going to slip and cut me? And then you slip and cut yourself? That's what we're talking about here, is being able to identify that potential bad thing that's coming. So, like I said, I've loved doing this. I've done it. There's over 9,000 kids have taken the class. It's over 350 times. Darn COVID got in the way. Otherwise, I would have broke 10,000, but we will eventually. That's it. Again, this was a little awkward for me, but I think you got the gist of it. I'm obviously not the smartest person on the planet, so there's somebody out there that's going to come up with a much better way or more, much cooler little trick. But the thing is don't let a perfect program be an enemy of a good program. That's the thing I think that frustrates me the most, is that we're just too afraid to just pull the trigger and get it done. Just throw it out there and see what happens. Because anytime we talk to the public, the kids, it's a good thing. There's always somebody that took something away. So, well, stop sharing. Okay, so yeah, it did go a little bit faster because nobody interrupted me by asking questions or laughing and giggling.
Does anybody have any questions? If you do, you can raise your hand in that little, there's somewhere it's got raise the hand. I don't remember where it is, reactions, I think, or type them in the chat box. Also, we will try to come up with a list if we've missed any questions in the chat. Let me think, anything else? Oh, this will be uploaded and posted to Rick's YouTube channel whenever we get that edited up, cleaned up a little bit. What else, Rick?
So where I would love to see this go, again, you got kind of the gist, and you're all of you are probably smarter than me, because I'm just a silly kid from Montana that joined the Marine Corps and ate crayons. But if I can come to some of your states, and I'm working on trying to develop a train the trainer class, to where we used your fires, because that you know them better than you know mine. You focus on what you think your area needs, whether it's smoke detectors, cooking fires, intentional fires. I'm a believer that kids start a lot of fires and we just don't find out about it. So that's kind of where my passion is. But we all know that if you read NFPA stuff, cooking is one of the worst ones out there. So just know that I want to help other people make this successful. If I was independently wealthy like Bill Gates, I would fly to the state and build my own props, and it would be a great time. But that can't happen. So whatever I can do, I'm going to do.
Hey, Rick, will you touch a little bit on what you use for your evaluation? There's a question in the chat. What kind of evaluation do you do to see the effects?
So there's a couple different things. One of the neater things that's newer to the program is because we're doing 6th grade, and I'll ask the teachers to you can bring in a packet of your own little thank you cards, and you can have this, ask the teacher to have them write a thank you card. And what you get from that a lot of times is, I really like the story about the kids, doing stupid stuff, or I really like how you mentioned, you found the footprint on the door, so you can kind of get a feedback on what they're picking up. And, you'll get one that says, thank you for thank you for telling me it's my choice, and I think that's kind of one that you can get from the teachers, from the students themselves. The other thing is that while I'm doing this, I'm doing it in a 20 to 30 kid classroom. I forgot to mention this. There's no assemblies. You can't do this in assembly because the kids aren't going to be paying attention. You can't find the one that's not paying attention. So you have to do 20, 30 kids. And then I do every science class. So I will teach this program 3, 4, 5. I've even taught it 6 times in one day. And when I do that, when I'm at the school, I will have lunch with the teachers. I will bring my own lunch. A lot of times, actually, they buy me lunch, which is awesome. But it's school food, so what do you do? So while I'm eating lunch, I'm asking them questions about certain students. Like I make a mental note. When you do this for a while as an investigator and as an instructor, you see and you recognize the kids that, oh, that's one of them. I hate to be that way, but it's true. You can figure out which kid, because typically the ones that do this are going to have certain characteristics, right? They're going to have behavior problems in school. That's kind of a big deal. So you recognize students that you really want to get that message to, and then you ask them about that specific kid, and you get the teacher's feedback. They're the ones that spend 8 hours a day with these guys for 180 days a year. So it's really an opportunity to see if you're having an impact, because they'll tell you right away, yeah, that kid right there, he has never raised his hand in class. He never gets his homework done. She says, I've never seen him engaged, but he was all in on this one. And so when you get that feedback, it's critical. The other thing is obviously the number of fires, and the big one is the number of kids that are caught playing with fire. We've had and again, I'm not going to say it's all me or all this class, but kids from before COVID, from 6th grade to high school, the vast majority of our kids in our school district had this class. And we went from catching 5, 6 kids a year to 1. Now there are other kids, let me rephrase that, kids that had the program. No, that's not even true. No, because we had a 14-year-old girl that lit a fire trying to kill her grandparent or foster parents. She didn't have the class, but that was one of the numbers, right? So when it comes to kids that have had the class that have been caught playing with fire, the real number is 3. 2 of them that didn't generate a 911 call. What happened was my vet, his wife called me and said, my son and his buddy, I just caught them making smoke bombs. I included it because they were using fire, and those 2 had the class. And then we had one kid that took a bunch of Axe body spray and was lighting fireballs in the school locker room.